way I see it, and this has taken couple of years of therapy to get through this, is I'm not coming out of the closet. I'm allowing people to come in and join me. So I'm letting people in that I want to see me like this and get to know who I am and that side of things.
Welcome to Gurl Talk with Jenny Raven. Episode 16, Into Her Closet, with Susy Whyte. So welcome to this podcast with me, Jenny Raven. I'm thrilled to have someone who lives on the same island as me, but up in Scotland, Susy Whyte, with us in the studio for what I'm hoping will be a heartfelt but also inspirational story about living our lives to the very fullest. Susy, how are you doing?
Hi, thank you, Jenny. Thank you for having me. I'm looking forward to this. I've listened to a few of your podcasts, so thank you for letting me be on.
So, well, I'm thrilled that we can, explore this conversation because I think you and I have quite a lot in common, and I suspect there's also things that we are different, which is always a lovely flavour to have. But as you know, if you've listened to the podcast, I always start off with some slightly naughty questions to get us into the vibe. So let me just go straight into them. So Susy Whyte, straight away, red or black?
Red.
PVC or rubber?
PVC.
Satin or lace?
Or satin.
Stockings, lace top hold-ups or a suspender belt?
Usually a suspender belt, but I'm wearing lace top hold-ups today because I'm meeting you.
Fantastic. Stockings, 10 denier, 15 or 20?
Usually 10 to 15, but I have been known to wear as much as 40.
Ideal height of heels?
That would depend.
Let me clarify then. There are two scenarios. Ideal height of heels at work?
Anywhere between 3" and 6.5.
Ideal height of heels for home playtime?
5.
Solo, twosome, threesome or moresome?
Really enjoyed threesomes. Have been involved in moresomes, but the threesome was more interesting, that shall we say.
So if it is a threesome, would that be you and 2 girls, you and 2 boys, or you with one of each?
Or one of each.
You naughty girl. Okay, so final question. How would you describe yourself?
I would say I'm a trans crossdresser. It's been this has been part of my journey to try and find out who I am. And I am trans, but I don't feel like I want to kind of fully transition, but I'm more comfortable presenting as myself, as Suzy.
I mean, what that really points to is, like me and like so many other people who listen to the podcast, we're living dual lives, partly because, I know you're Gen X just like I am, and, we began life in a world that was unforgiving of the concept of trans, some of the language around it back then, I don't particularly get offended by, but, I would characterize myself back then as a tranny. And I think that probably I'll still take that one. I'm still quite happy with that one. But the whole notion of dual lives, like myself, you have begun the journey of kind of at least trying to integrate Suzy into your main life and perhaps even move more into Suzy. So tell us about how that's gone for you.
Been a mix of there's been ups and downs with it, as you can imagine. When I took the plunge and came out to somebody at work, it went very well. They were very supportive, and then it was a few weeks later they actually saw me on camera as Suzy, and that kind of did help, along with being in therapy, which I've been in therapy now for over 4 years. So that all kind of helped. So I came out to somebody at the back end of 2021. Came out to my partner at the start of 22, which did not go down well. And it's an ongoing problem. And she doesn't know that I am actually out at work or that I've large number of my friends are aware and have seen me like this. So that's been challenging. But on the positive side for that is it's allowed me to explore a lot more of myself and be more of who I am, which has been liberating, but has had its downside as well. People, if they're considering, coming out to you don't come out once, you come out several times. You're telling people over and over again. So I felt personally very vulnerable when I was doing it, because you don't know what reaction you're going to get from a lot of people. And I'm lucky the company that I work for have got a very good LGBTQ plus network. And so I connected with them first, and they helped me through coming out more if I wanted to. So yes, it's had its good points, it's had its bad points, but on the whole, I'm glad I did it. But there's been some difficulties and challenges.
Let's just talk about, I don't know whether you recall the very first moment, the very first person you fully let Suzy out with. And what was that moment like?
To be honest, it was a spur of the moment thing. It wasn't planned. I was talking with somebody at work who was going through a bit of a rough time, and they were worried about confiding in somebody. So I just took a decision and showed them a picture of me and basically said, if this makes it any easier, this is me. And that kind of allowed us to grow closer and then be able to try and talk things through as, not just my stuff, but their stuff as well. They were very supportive, and I was able to talk to them about a lot of different things around, being trans and my hands were shaking. Let's be honest. I was pretty much shitting it, because I had no idea whether or not they were going to be able to accept it, how they would accept it, or if they would go and run off and start just telling everybody, so I felt scared and vulnerable. But, I shouldn't, I'm saying I shouldn't have, but the reaction was so positive, it really did kind of give me a lift and give me a boost that somebody was prepared to accept me regardless of how I was dressed or how I looked or anything like that. So that was just so uplifting, enlightening, liberating, shall we say.
I understand this very clearly, being Gen X as well, decades and decades of fear and terror of being discovered and what would follow from that. And I remember characterizing it as somebody was talking to me about, it's not good to lie to your partner about stuff. And I was like, I get that, and I totally agree with that, but I'm in the world of like, I'm lying by keeping some secrets in order to survive. It's not like an uncomfortable feeling. For me, it was about literal survival. So how did it feel once you kind of cross that threshold and the truth is out?
So when I got together with my partner, I had thought that Suzy was dead and buried. Back at the end of 2015, I'd been on a load of antidepressants, and basically I did the full purge. Everything went. And, it's one of those points, as you say, growing up in the west of Scotland in the 80s, you were kind of told there was a cure, inverted commas, for these types of things, and so when you've been on antidepressants, and it really does fuck with your brain, it really does. I kind of took this of being, I am cured, right? It's a load of bollocks, and there is no cure. There doesn't need to be a cure. Everybody is who they are. But when you've grown up in that type of indoctrination, you think you're cured. And we got together, and there was no sign of anything. There was no clothes, no wigs, nothing. Everything was gone. But it was about 3 years later, just before COVID, as you said before in your podcast, little things start sparking in the back of your mind. And all of a sudden, I had a dress, I had a wig, I had makeup. I don't even remember ordering stuff. I did it, and it appeared on them, but I can't actually remember taking the conscious decision to do it. And then obviously COVID hit. But so yes, when I got to my partner, I don't feel I wasn't lying, because I believed Susie was dead and buried, and I believed that she was gone for good, and that's wrong. But so when I did come out to her, yes, I had been back dressing again for about 18 months properly. And it's tough, because she doesn't want to see me like this, and she doesn't want to know anything about it. So that's hard to take. But speaking with a number of other girls in a similar situation, they've got partners that are exactly the same. They don't want anything to do with it, but they accept that you are different in whatever way that is. So it's just, so I didn't say I was lying to her, because at the start I wasn't. Susie was dead, but when I did come out to her, and I wasn't ready to come out to her, to be honest, she thought I was having an affair with somebody, and this is when it just blurted out. So that kind of certainly was a conversation stopper, shall we say. And it took a long, long while before we were able to kind of approach the subject again.
What about ex-partners, before your current partner? How did it go down with them, or was it hidden?
It was hidden. I was, nearly 20 years with my ex, and it was completely hidden. I mean, yeah, I did have some stockings, I had some suspender belts, but nothing more. And it was 2008 when Susie finally burst onto the screen. That's when I first experimented with makeup, with wigs. Got my first pair of heels, which were 5-inch black suede stilettos. Don't start small, I had to go big. And but it was kind of easy to hide it, because my ex wouldn't go into the loft because she was afraid of heights. So that's where everything was, out the way in the loft, and she wouldn't go in there. So she almost caught me once, and that did scare the crap out of me. And I kind of didn't dress up again for months after that, because it shook me. But no, she never caught me.
It's really sad, isn't it? That something that is so both benign and harmless and fundamental to our entire being is so vilified, shamed, misunderstood, a whole host of negative reasons, ranging from just not understanding to, cultural or even religious kind of like intolerance. It really does make me sad, because it is so unbelievably harmless at the end of the day. I understand it's an adjustment. I understand it's very hard for some people to go, oh, okay, you were that and now you are this. For some context, my ex-partner of 20 years ago, when we were together for 3 years, I met with her recently, and she's now a man, and she's fully transitioned, and it was weird. It was genuinely weird, but only weird for about 90 seconds, and then everything just adjusted, and then it was completely fine, because actually it was exactly the same person, and all I really had to do was just say, I have to accept reality as it is, not how I would like it to be. And that's, that would be the message I would love, for partners who are struggling, is to just play with it for a bit. And it's not like, you need to buy into, as a total, for some people it is a complete, shift and change. But for most of us, we're sitting on the in-between, we're male presenting, sometimes female presenting other times, and we'll make our choices based on a whole host of reasons. But when we are choosing to female present, it's not such a big deal if you sat on the sofa watching Netflix. And and the more you can kind of adjust to it and get used to it, life becomes so much easier. And I suppose that kind of extends, like, my partner's fantastic, but my family, not so much. And that seems to be another common pattern. And I think that's possibly because our identity is so deeply and profoundly ingrained in the structure of that entity known as the family. How has that experience been for you?
So my family don't know. I've not come out to them. I don't plan on coming out to them. They are rather caught up in religion. And I, to be honest, I have no relationship with my brother. Basically, a lot of his views don't align with mine, shall we say. And that's not somebody I want to be around. So I think I see him maybe once a year, or at most twice, but I have no other contact with him. And I think my parents are elderly, other families, in the whole wider family, I'm the second youngest. My brother's younger than me. And they, it's not something I really want to discuss with them at all. It's more, I'm allowing, the way I see it, and this has taken couple of years of therapy to get through this, is I'm not coming out of the closet. I'm allowing people to come in and join me. So I'm letting people in that I want to be inside me and see me like this and get to know who I am in that side of things. So when I did finally come out at work, which was rather interesting on a conference call with 700 people, there was a lot of love emojis and care emojis coming through as I was talking, because I was talking about Trans Awareness Week back at the back end of 2023, and I've volunteered to do it. And the person arranging it said, "Look, if you want to be female presenting or male presenting, doesn't bother me. It's entirely up to you." And I thought, that's fine. I'll do it as a male. I got up in the morning. Boom, there we go. And came out to 700 people. And yeah, I did get a lot of comments afterwards, supportive comments. I'll say, that was everybody that contacted me was supportive. And then I didn't have to do it, but then I decided to do I was asked to do another one for another department of 500 people. And it was like, hello, this is me. And again, it was positive, but my voice was breaking. I was shaking, nervous. I was terrified. That was 700 people followed by 500 people, and to be fair, every single one of them has respected my privacy in that. So, there's not been posts on Facebook or on Twitter, everybody's respected my privacy to allow me to come out as I feel, as I see fit. So that has been a huge positive in it. But it was a few months later before I finally took the steps to go into the office. And that was, I won't say it was a bad experience because everybody made me feel welcome, but I didn't feel right. There was something about me that didn't feel right when I went into the office that first time. But as I say, everybody accepted me. Yes, it was difficulty, and some poor sod walked into a wall because they turned to look and was like, what, looking at me, and then suddenly walked into a wall. Not that it was just a shock. They were used to seeing some bloke in jeans and a shirt, and then suddenly it's a dress and it was kitten heels and so that it was a shock there. But they really made me feel welcome and made me feel like this was not going to be a problem.
Do you think some of that discomfort you felt was because your autopilot, your identity, and I don't mean identity in the way that we talk about trans identities, I mean, your kind of like work identity has a masculine way of being, and so there was a kind of like a weird disconnect. Not passing any judgment or just trying to understand, really, because I understand that as well. There are times where Jenny would not be appropriate for me, and there are times when she's very appropriate, and I can see you grinning and chuckling away, and like the idea of taking Jenny like fully to work is a bit like pulling a pin out of a hand grenade. Granted, when the hand grenade went off, it would be full of pink butterflies, but nonetheless, it would be a hand grenade.
I think what the problem was for me in I'd spoken to a couple of people in the work about, coming in, they were up for it, and I was like trying to work out what to wear. And somebody has suggested this black wool dress I have. And, this is April 24. And I've not worn the dress since, by the way. That's the other thing. But I wore this black wool dress that was sat below the knee. And I had black opaque stockings, suspender belt, and small kitten heels. I didn't feel that I was presenting myself the way I felt I wanted to present myself. And I think it's because it's a nice dress. I like the dress, but I felt that dress just wasn't making me feel like me. And the second time I went in, which was 3 months later, I had a grey top similar to this black one I'm wearing today. A sort of light burgundy, pinkish pencil miniskirt and black pattern tights with 3-inch heels. Oh my God, that felt so much better. I felt more alive, because that to me was more my style. So yeah, in the same miniskirt, it wasn't that. It sits, just below mid-thigh, but it just felt so much more, this is more me. And that evening we went into Edinburgh for a night out, which was the first time I'd been in a non-trans and non-cross-dresser environment as myself. And to be fair, everybody looked after me, but I was crapping at that. But it just felt more like who I was, being able to, wear 3-inch heels and a skirt above the knee and just something a bit tighter. And so that was a much more positive experience, in that I felt more me in that respect. I think if that's making sense, but I just didn't feel like myself that first time I went in.
It makes total sense, and I understand that I have different personalities, and you want to choose the right personality for the right experience. Some of those are leadership personalities, some of them are submissive and playful, some of them, Jenny she's an outrageous flirt, and she is very, very dangerous in certain scenarios. So I would really not take her. I would not allow her out in certain scenarios, because it would just get me into trouble, and maybe that trouble would be a lot of fun. But I have to think about the totality of my life as well, not just about the immediate visceral fun that I would have in the moment, which would be delicious and delightful. And it's funny how, you characterized it as well with the clothes that, one set of clothes wasn't vibing and the other was. And again, I totally understand that. And I think that's something a lot of, a lot of masculine energy, like that, masculine energy does know how to look fabulous and amazing and all of those things. But the feminine energy understands, like, there's like so much more colors in the rainbow of that. And it's not just the way that the clothes look, it's also the way that they feel. And how, it touches the skin, and how the skin interacts with the fabric, and sometimes the fabric on the fabric, and how electrifying all of that can be, almost to the point where it's difficult to operate, because the experience and the sensation is so outrageously overwhelming. And then to have that supported by people around you is so it's almost, for me personally, I find it emotionally overwhelming. I don't understand how gorgeous women don't dress a particular way, like 24/7, 365, because if I could, I would. Yeah. And so overall, your experience at work has been incredibly positive, it sounds.
Yes, it's, although I did get dress coded one time, I did get into trouble for one outfit I was wearing, but I didn't think there was anything wrong with it. A lot of people complimented it, but somebody did complain to HR that the skirt with the boots was overly sexualized.
Well, I would take that as a tremendous compliment.
Well, I was telling a woman at work, and because we'd been talking about shoes, because she had a pair of shoes that I wanted, and I had them different color to what she had. But we were talking, and I showed her the picture of the outfit, and I said, "Oh yes, I get dress coded for that." Well, she just went absolutely apeshit about the fact somebody had the audacity to complain about what she thought was a perfectly good, fabulous outfit. She was more offended than I was. But I was like, oh, I'll take that. But yes, it has been a positive experience. I am aware about what you said about Jenny potentially getting you into trouble. There's been a couple of times I've maybe been a wee bit too, I won't say flirtatious at work, but one of your recent posts has had about learning to cross your legs, and I was talking to a person at the office one time, and I wasn't meant to be in that day, so I had to rush in because of technical problems, and I was wearing quite a short skirt with I think it was green tights, and somebody asked me a question. I sat down opposite them, and their eyes went straight to my legs. So they were talking to my legs, I was talking to their face. So I kind of crossed them and recrossed them a few times, and I could see him sitting a wee bit, shall we say, uncomfortable in his seat. So I kind of did it again, but the skirt rode up a little bit more. So I get what you're saying about Jenny getting into trouble. I've done that a couple of times at work, and yes, it could have got me into trouble. So yes, I get it.
Yeah, it's definitely a real thing. Let's just backtrack if you can for a moment and talk about your journey with therapy. I'm sure you're aware. I put myself into therapy a few years ago. I was in for about a year. But what's your experience been like? And would you recommend it? I guess one of the things we're talking about, and I'd like to become like the focus of this particular episode, is advice for people who feel stuck, like not living their full life, not living their best life, not living their feminine life, and how to approach integrating as much as they feel comfortable with. And for me, therapy was a big part of that, and it sounds like that was the same for you.
It was. I was in another deep depression, suicidal depression. We're talking, close a couple of times to just trying to end it all. And my partner had been, trying to get me to go into therapy, just to find out what the problem was. And I contacted a therapist, and that was diabolical, right? I was after having a meeting with them, I was in a worse state than what I was before I started. But somebody put me on to a few other therapists that had been around. So I contacted one who was based in Edinburgh. We had a conversation, and I immediately felt better than I had done. So basically set up regular weekly sessions. And it's been a lot of blood, sweat and tears. There's been some laughter in there as well. To be honest, if I had been going through therapy in 2014, 2015, rather than antidepressants, I would probably have come out back then, to be honest. Therapy doesn't work for everybody. I'm aware of that. But if that is something, you need to find the right therapist. You need to find somebody that you feel you can work with, somebody that you feel you can trust, somebody who's not going to project their unconscious agenda, shall we say, because they're not there to try and judge you, but, people do judge. So you need to find somebody you feel that you can work with that's not going to push you down a certain route or try and stop you going down a certain route. Somebody that will challenge you, because by God, does she challenge me? I'll be honest. There have been times I've gone, "Oh, fuck you," but yeah, it's somebody that you feel that you can just be open with without any fear of retribution or judgment. And the hardest stage for me through therapy was not coming out to my therapist or appearing on camera or at our office as Susie. The hardest part was me being able to accept this is who I am. And that's not, accepting that I am trans admitting I was trans was easy. Accepting it, that was very, very difficult. And it's down to society norms rather than anything else. It's society's norms and what they believe is men should be men, women should be women. They don't believe that, gender is a sliding scale and everybody is different. But it took me 7-8 months of therapy to be able to accept who I was, which then allowed me to start then trying to understand who Susie is. And yes, I go to work like this. Sometimes I go to work male presenting. I tend to wear colourful clothes, although not today, to be honest. But I tend to wear a lot more bright colours, yellows, greens, reds. Whereas male presenting, it was always black or blue. Right? There was nothing else. Just being able to understand who I am and accept who I am and grow as to who I am. The other thing I would say is there are a lot of very supportive people who are willing to help you, talk to you, sometimes give you advice, tell you. So it is a very scary place because the people that make it scary are the ones with the loudest voices. But that's just my experience. And everybody has different experiences. But yes, I think it was being able to admit it, accept it, and then start to understand that that's how therapies worked for me over the last 4 years. And I'm still going through it. It's not a quick fix for me. For some people, 6 months, a year, 2 years. Some people are in it for decades. You have to make it work for you and be prepared to accept there will be a lot of tears. There will be a lot of tears. There will be a lot of hard work.
Yeah, we all carry that cognitive dissonance from childhood of we learn that the way of the world is this particular way. And even through 20s and 30s, you kind of carry that and you continue in that. And it's only later in life that I started, I wouldn't say it's radically rethinking, but really questioning. And even now, I still feel that cognitive dissonance and sometimes how I automatically think or automatically react. And then I have to pull myself back and say, hang on a minute, that's not what I intellectually know to be true now, and it's not even what I feel to be true, but there's just this kind of like hardwired way of being. There's very, very difficult to shirk. But that really interestingly kind of leads into my next question, which was actually a really big question for me as well, which is why now? Because I knew when I was 5, and we were talking earlier, you knew when you were 7, or you at least knew something was different. But, that's decades ago. So why has Susie demanded to be part of your life now and not at another time in your life?
I don't think she's demanded to be part of my life now. She demanded to be part of my life years ago. I wasn't listening. Back in 2008, when I was still in my 30s, a long time ago, I signed up for my website. It doesn't exist anymore, but it was called Tranny International, right? That's what it was called. And that's the first time Susie had a name, right? That was the first time I had a name. And it was more of a support site rather than, because there's other sites out there which are contact sites for sex, and I've used them in the past and they're good for what they do. This one is much more of somebody once described it as, and I don't like using the word, but someone once described it as Facebook for trannies. That's how they described it. And it was a mixture of people, some who had been out for decades, some that were like me, who were just kind of starting to find their feet, so to speak. And I got a lot of advice on makeup, because the first time I tried it, I looked like Coco the Clown. There was big spots, and it was awful, right? It was, it was something you would see in a horror movie. It was but people there, I was able to share pictures. They were telling me what to do, how to do different things, working out around, bra sizes. I knew absolutely bugger all about a bra. That was a journey that I was going on at that time. I was going through the starts of what was a very long breakup, but at that time it was still more of a sexual kick. I'll be brutally honest. It was a case of getting dressed up, stocking suspenders, high heels, way and some fun in the bedroom, and that was what it pretty much felt like for years. But when finally broke up, start of 2013, I explored this side of me more, and I think that's what caused the what I call my great purge at 2015, because basically I felt Susie was taking over, and I just had this massive panic attack. I was on antidepressants, and they'd also given me diazepam or whatever it is as well. So I was, at times I felt completely, as to say, off your tits, and I just felt that Susie was to blame for everything, right? I blamed Susie for absolutely everything, and so I killed her off, because that was, to me at that time, the root of all my problems. Right? It was bollocks, it really is. But society norms and growing up, and I grew up at a time when you had things like Are You Being Served and a Low on, where men dressed as women for comic effect. That's what they did. They dressed for comic effect. That's kind of how that's how it made me feel at that time. So no, Susie has been there for a long time, but I only started listening to her in 2021. That's when I started to listen. So as to why I started listening, I have absolutely no idea, but it just felt more powerful than it had ever been before, and I wanted to share it. That's what I wanted. I can't explain why that I felt like that, but that's exactly how it made me feel. I wanted to be seen, and so it's, as you say, why now? I don't know, but I started to listen to what my heart was saying, not what society was saying and not what my brain was saying. It was kind of what was in my heart at that time. And it, it still makes me emotional thinking about it, but it's just kind of, this is who I am. And sometimes I'm flirtatious, sometimes I'm cheeky, sometimes I'm naughty, sometimes I'm professional. It's, I just feel that I can be all of those things as myself.
Right.
And not hide that away.
Yeah, so much to unpack there. And I've been haunted by the question of why now? And the way I've rationalized it is, and the way I remember talking to my therapist, it's like, if not now, when? Like, is it, am I going to wait for next year? I'm getting older. And there's a point where where I could see the end of the tunnel. I mean, you can always see the end of the tunnel, but usually for a large part of your life, it's just a tiny pinprick at the end. But suddenly the tunnel got a bit bigger, and I'm like, wow, I got to deal with this. Otherwise, I don't want to be that person lying on my deathbed saying, if only I'd done that thing. And my experience has been almost entirely positive and fun, and I'm stealing your characterization of like, I'm not going out into the world, you're all coming into my closet. Because that's exactly what I'm doing. I am sticking a toe out into the world here and there, but definitely it is invitation into my closet. So that's a brilliant and very, very resonant characterization. I jokingly, I was chatting with Ellen Noir the other day, and jokingly commented that actually my girl wardrobe is bigger than my boy wardrobe. I mean, not just a bit bigger, but significantly bigger. There's so much more in it. I wanted to talk about my books as well, because I like to do that where possible. And I know you recently listened to the audiobook for first time. What was that experience like for you?
It took me 3 attempts to get through it because I kept stopping. You can imagine why.
We can be honest.
Okay, yeah. It made me orgasm several times. So it's one of those things. The build up, I listened. I always feel books like that are better listened to, especially when it's done with a sexy voice, and it's, slow build-ups, building up sensation, building up atmosphere, and it was extremely hot. I absolutely loved it. I just haven't had a chance yet to get round to listening to the second one, but that's definitely on the list, because it was I was lying in the bed and it was like, whew, it's hot in here, and yes, that sometimes Sasha, yes, as you say, I wouldn't mind a go with them, tell you that.
I start writing, and quite literally characters from other stories just demand to be part of the new story. And Sasha is she's like a force of nature that just comes crashing in. She wasn't even in the story until I literally put her in the story, because I could feel her. I don't want to spoil what happens, but it was going along very nicely, and then she was just kind of banging at the door saying, "Let me in." So I thought, okay, well, let me in, and she was very, very naughty. And Ruby is another character everybody, I get a lot of feedback about, because she's so just deliciously wonderful.
Yes.
But yes, I'll take all that feedback, darling. Yes. Thank you so much.
No, it was hot. And yes, it was, yes, very sexy. I loved it. And I think what makes it, from stuff I've read in the past, what makes this one unique is it's not, wham bam, thank you. It's a build up to it. It's drawing you in to that world. It's, so it's very much an erotic story with smut in it, rather than being a smutty story with some erotica. It's very, to me anyway, it comes across very much as an erotic story with smut thrown in, just at the right point.
Right. Again, I was chatting with Ellen Noir about this, and erotic is a really good word. Erotic, sensual is good words, because that is what it feels to be feminine to me. Is like, I have masculine energy, of course I do, and that feels very sexual and, a desire to get to orgasm. Whereas the erotic and the sensual is more like edging, is more like, I just want to stay in this delicious state of hyper arousal for as long as I possibly can. And that's what wearing the clothes and being in my feminine gives me access to. it's possibly one of the reasons why my partner is, happy when I'm in my feminine, because, sexual encounters tend to last much longer and are extended and stretched out, which just makes for more fun, of course. Even I'm getting a little bit toasty now.
It's certainly,
Yeah.
Yeah, it's certainly, and it's like the same with me when, there are days I've gone into the office and I've worn a flared skirt, but I've got stockings and suspenders underneath as opposed to tights. And it's that difference, knowing that I'm wearing something that I consider to be sexy or a little bit naughty, that nobody else knows I'm wearing them. And I think, and again, if I'm wearing a pencil skirt, I'll have usually fancy tights on. I order tights online and got lots of different colours, different styles, different patterns, and it's been, which has also been another area where they've got a Facebook group where you can share pictures, and it's men and women and trans people, cross-dressers, all sharing pictures of them in the tights or skirts or whatever. And it's another area that has very much been a positive factor in helping my confidence grow. But people have contacted me and said that seeing my pictures has helped their confidence grow, which to me was like, I was in shock that that's how some women actually saw, when they saw me, they felt that they wanted to do something similar and started to be bolder with what they wore and gave them confidence. And it's like, that was very humbling for me. I just didn't expect anything like that. I've had a lot of comments, people telling me that, I've just because I've shared my pictures, and somebody that is, trans cross-dresser has given women and others the opportunity to feel that they can be who they want to be as well. It was like, shocked me, but I'll take it.
Yeah, I think that's the positive message in the whole conversation, and it's what I'm trying to do, with my stories, with my website, with my podcast, with my socials, is to normalize who we are, however we are, so that the more diversity we see in the world, the less surprised we are by that diversity. And I have to say, the younger generation are brilliant. They seem to be utterly unfazed by anything. You can literally be anything and anyone you want, and they will vigorously fight for your right to be that person. And I think that's just a wonderful thing. And I only wish, you and I had that experience when we were 12 and 15, and when it really mattered, that moment of identifying your sexuality and then feeling like you were forced into a box and it never really felt right, the box that you were forced into, and therefore, things were difficult and challenging. So yeah, I think, we're living into a new era.
The box analogy is a good one, because I flipped that one on its head a few years ago, because I'm a big fan of sci-fi, Star Trek, Doctor Who, Star Wars, always felt that growing up, when, you feel alone and lonely, when, things like Star Trek made me feel like I had friends when I had none in real life. But this analogy of being in the box is, I looked at it from the point of the view of the TARDIS. Why would I want to be outside the box? The box is bigger on the inside. I'm bigger on the inside. I bring people into my TARDIS, so to speak, that's infinite on the inside. If you want to be on the outside, fine, but I'll let you in. And it's much more fun.
Yeah.
It's much more fun on the inside.
Okay, well, I think we're drawing to a close now. My final question is, what advice, I suppose I could ask you for it, what advice would you offer someone in a similar situation, but let's make it a little bit more personal. And what advice would you offer yourself, maybe when you were a teen, or maybe when you're in your 30s, it doesn't really matter. What advice would you offer yourself about your journey and how best to live your life?
The first thing would be to accept myself for who I am. The clothes don't change me, but it's being able to accept yourself. That's the biggest piece of advice I can say, because until you accept yourself, you can't accept anything else. Sort of personally speaking, that was. And once I found that inner acceptance, I was able to allow myself to grow. There's a lot of really, really good, genuine, nice, proper people out there who are happy to see trans people, cross-dressers, anybody. They're happy to accept them, accept us all. But, it's, I think for me, it's definitely been self-acceptance. And then that's allowed me to open the door and start to bring people in. That's probably for me, if I could say back to myself and as a 13-year-old putting on a pair of my mother's tights and saying, this is not wrong. This is natural. This is just who you are. Please accept yourself, because you will have a much happier life the minute you do.
Very wise words. Well, look, thank you so much for chatting with me. How can people find you? Because you have an Instagram, which is a private one, I know, but people can find you. How can we find you?
So I'm on Instagram. It's Miss Susy Whyte, both with a Y. So it's a Y in the Susie and a Y in the White. That was just me being pretentious more than anything else. And I am on Facebook, but I tend to share more stuff on Flickr. And again, you'll find it as Miss Susy Whyte. I tend to share more pictures on Flickr than anybody else at the minute. And the pictures are they're public, so anybody can view them. Not the naughty ones. They're for followers only. But you'll find me on Flickr, Instagram, and Facebook.
Fantastic. Well, we'll put links in the body text of the podcast. Thank you so much. I've really enjoyed our time together, and I can't wait to get this one post-produced and up.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you, girls, for listening to my podcast. I really appreciate you listening all the way through to the end. If you've enjoyed what you've heard, then please consider going over to my website at jennyraven.com and join my mailing list. Then you'll get information about all of my very, very naughty things that I send out on a regular basis. You'll also get access to a couple of my free stories. You can either read them, or better still, you can experience them as an audio journey where I will directly encourage you to dress up for me in your favourite costume and do very, very, very unspeakably naughty things. I can't wait for you to send me photos of that experience with me, so please do join up at jennyraven.com.